tighter so that way I'm not screaming all over the place. All right. Everyone's week's been good so far? Yeah? Everyone had a good week so far? Okay, so today we're really going to work on some of the basis behind what a winning culture is, or what is a winning culture, and how do we foster that? How do we make this the theme at all times? Okay, big stuff coming up into the school year. So next week you guys start school, right? So what matters is how you address a lot of stuff as you go throughout your day. Now on Monday we talked about a few different things that was extremely important, and I think for the most part in the beginning I touched on some of the science stuff behind what you should know pertaining to mindset and concepts and how you learn and develop. And then I touched on some of the negative stuff too, right? I talked about like guilty by association. You know, we had a good talk on Monday about a lot of stuff pertaining to how distractions throughout your life can really change a lot of things for you. And I think everybody can understand and that resonates, and that's super important. So big thing is with the winning culture is it starts with everything that you have to do all the time. Okay. Now winning culture has a lot of different points that's there that's going to really make the biggest difference in your life. And I think it's always good to talk about where you came from or what you've experienced to get where you're supposed to go. You're supposed to have that perspective. Remember in the beginning I talked about perspective and how exercise can create perspective for the body to remember, so our mind can remember, and in that way we know what it feels like to go under pressure. And that's super important to understand. I mentioned I have coached in part to some areas that did not have some really good winning culture. Okay? Once again, created perspective. It taught me a lot. And so there were certain things that I realized, certain behaviors that really were true. Okay? And I love the foundation of what we have here. And we talk about this stuff. We were talking about what we got going on here, what we're doing, and how important this stuff is. We were talking about it earlier today for a good 30 minutes before we ever had a chance to even come up here. Because we're excited. We're excited about this. And we had this conversation because he worked with a kid that's actually excelling in the area really well. I'm not going to give any names. Once again, I'm just going to touch on some of the stuff. We talked about how that school is actually implementing baseball psychology and some inner workings to develop culture as well. And that school, I have no issue telling you what school it is, but that's James Allen High School. And I want to ask you all a question. Is James Allen High School, do they perform in baseball really well more often than not? If you did not know or did not take a really good look, they're pretty good almost all the time. I'm not kidding. That program does develop a lot of championships. They do well. And if not championships, they will definitely push the threshold consistently. And that says a lot about what they're doing. We talked about some of the differences between what we're going to have and do and what they are doing and some of the stuff that they're doing, which is really good, and we love that, okay? I immediately was like, man, I'm so excited about that because that's what we want to do. We want to elevate everybody in this whole entire area. We want to bring up everything, okay? If you all can take the next step to pioneer these behaviors, other schools are going to want to follow. You see that? Other schools are going to want to follow. Not only will they, but what I talked about before, other players will want to follow that as well, okay? And then you will develop the culture that's necessary to always win. But it starts with understanding what can hurt culture, what can really bring up the culture, all that. So in a winning culture, first thing we got to understand is attitude. Now, I'm sure all of you can relate. How many of you have a bad attitude before? Go ahead. I know. No one excluded. Okay? Almost everybody has experienced a bad attitude before, but let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a bad attitude and figured out that it did you right? Have you ever had that? Like had a bad attitude and it was the perfect thing to have a bad attitude. Does that ever happen? No. And so a lot of people don't realize that having a bad attitude towards something is never well, some people will never realize it. But having a bad attitude towards something or anything at all is rarely ever going to help you in any situation whatsoever. Now, there may be a one or two circumstance case where that could possibly happen. But for the most part, there's no area in life that you're going to go through that's going to require you to have a really bad attitude. Okay? You need to have a good attitude about a lot of things that you do. And you know what's hard about that? Is life is going to present a lot of different things that is going to it's going to make you want to have a bad attitude, right? Like, it's going to happen. We talked about what was one of the big distractions. Go ahead. What's that? We talked about distractions, and what did I say on one of the distractions? And then you had a bad attitude.
If you or like, or I guess there was no distraction.
Yep, like there was a distraction that we had.
Social media.
Social media. And if your mom or dad or teacher was like, give me your phone, I'm taking all your stuff, and you didn't have social media, are you going to have a bad attitude?
Yeah.
And what is that going to do for you? Or the other thing, which I was going to mention, or see if anyone wanted to land it, was what was the other item I said that you did blank and then you got a bad attitude?
You woke up late.
Woke up late. There it is. You woke up late and then all of a sudden you were like, oh, and then mom and dad, man, that made you mad, right? Then that gets thrown off. Now you're a distraction to them, then they become a distraction to you. Having a poor attitude in almost every area is going to make things tough for you. It's going to make it tough. So having a winning attitude is all about the positives, okay? Now that's going to kind of segue and jump over a little bit into the power positive. But in the power positive, what I'm talking about is taking every type of situation that you can ever imagine and think about how it can positively affect you. Think about that. I'm not going to tell the full story about it because I will still save this for another day. But there's a life-changing event that I had, okay? And not only did it knock me down, I mean, it put me in a hospital for a long time. It messed me up. It messed up my work. It messed up stuff with my kids. It messed up stuff with me coaching. It messed up a whole bunch of stuff, okay? It was tough. It was tough on my family. We had to figure out a lot of different ways to do things because I could not physically do anything. I was practically crippled for a period of time. And in that moment, everything felt negative. Can you imagine what that's got to feel like? You can't even forget going to play baseball. Forget even going to school. You couldn't even get up out of bed, period. You couldn't get out of the hospital. That's the stuff I'm talking about. And I still turned it into a positive. It was a good thing that happened. It was a good thing. And most people will look at that and they go into like a deep hole of depression, right? They start looking at that and be like, man, this is bad. You know, my whole life is just messed up. Oh, woe is me. You heard that before? Oh, woe is me. You know about that? Okay? Like, and then you start feeling bad for yourself. But that doesn't do anything. So we have a lot of ways to make this transform into so many different areas of baseball. In so many different areas because this game is built on negativity. Okay? It is built on that. Okay? One of the only sports, right, that you can still hit a 300 average, and that is a great average. That's good. That's good. But think about it. Ready? That's 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10. Think about that with your at-bats. That's totally different than what most people would ever see in any sport. But baseball players have to be okay with that. They have to be positive about that circumstance. I'm going to give you another one. You were 0 for 4 in a game. Okay, you're 0 for 4. But, runners at third base, you hit a deep fly ball, sac fly, right? Scores a winning run in the 8th inning. It's a positive thing, isn't it? But most people would then look at the average and be like, man, this is a negative. But baseball's different. We live on this stuff, okay? Let me give you, I'm gonna flip the script a little bit, right? A pitcher. A pitcher can throw 90 pitches, okay, boom, boom, throw 90 pitches, and I mean, kill the strike zone, pound it. Throw 70%, 75% strikes, own it. Keep this thing to a 0-0 game, and then the last inning happened, and boom, one guy hits a home run, game's over, right? And what is that pitcher known for? The home run he gave up. Did the pitcher do a bad job? No. No. Look, that's okay. Right? The power of positive is understanding a lot of different things. Now, one of your homework moments, okay? So I'm gonna let Coach Taz drill you on different things for homework, especially going from Monday to today. However, I will say this. He gave homework one time about what? About a positive what? If something bad happens in the game.
Oh, we gotta like find something to reset yourself.
Say it again.
Find something to reset yourself.
Find something to reset yourself. And that's to bring you from a negative into a positive. You see that? And it's super important you understand that. We also talked a little bit today, we were having this conversation about how there's like a reset, a clear. There's a way to do that. There's a way to get inside your mind. Now, some players are just not going to buy in. You know why they're not going to buy in? Because they're negative, because they're probably too cool. You know what's one of the craziest things? Is there's a difference between looking cool and being cool. There's a difference between the two. Anybody can look cool. Anybody can look cool. But being cool is the guy that's going to do the steps. He's not going to care about anything else except for getting the job done. That's the player that is probably going to make the play. Okay? Be cool. Be cool. Being positive is a big part of being cool. Alright? If you can be positive in all these different areas in life, you're going to find that this game gets real easy. Because you're going to strike out, and the first thing you're going to do is do what? Hey, my bad, I'm going to get this next one. I'm going to get the next one. Okay? You see that? Right? Pitcher, right? A pitcher. Who's a pitcher here? Raise your hand. All right, good. So look, you go to pitch, you get called for, let's say a 1-1 breaking pitch outside corner, but it's supposed to be a strike. You spike that thing, catcher's got to block it. Okay? What's your first move? Hey, my bad, man. That's my fault. That's my fault. Okay? Because as a catcher, they're now having to do all the extra work, right? Take some ownership in that, okay? Turn around to a positive. Hey, I'll get the next one. I'll get the next one. That's a big deal. That's how you treat this game. And you're going to have to treat it that way all the time. And don't ever, ever, ever be a culture killer, okay? Culture killers, okay, are the people that are like, hey, man, dude, you suck. That's good. Suspect, ball player, whatever. That right there is horrible. That's a culture killer. But being honest, how many times have you ever had a moment in your life where you looked at a buddy or a teammate and you were like, right? I've done it before. I've done it in the dugout before, and I've done it. But you know what? You never thought what you could do for that person if you were like, hey man, don't worry about it. Let's go together and work in the field this weekend to help each other. Imagine what that would do. Just for 1 second. Imagine how much better your program would be if you could take that power positive and influence that across the whole program. We need everybody to step up in every way possible. Today, throughout what we talked about with the clear and getting your mind right, we talked about just a quick, good, deep breath. There's a meditation process behind that. That's going to clear your mind out. Just being able to do that. Having a book to read and to look, right? How many of you like to read for real? Just be honest. Look at that. No, raise that hand up there. You know what? You want to hear what's crazy? Here's what's crazy. Ready? I didn't like to read either. You know how many books I've read in the last 30 days? 8. No, you're not. You're not the smartest man in the room, though. Never be, never be. Don't be that guy, right? Right? So, ready? 8 books I've read. I did not like reading growing up, but you know what I found out? That I became a better person if I read. Reading a book that gives interest, that is going to elevate your performance, to give you a better mindset, is a big deal. That's a good thing, okay? Being positive. Once again, the difference between looking cool and being cool, sometimes it's reading. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's going to the gym when you don't want to. Sometimes it's picking up your teammate. Sometimes it's being the guy that does this. We got to find all these different ways to do that. I didn't become a reader until I was in military school, because I got in trouble. And I didn't have much else I could do. And I started getting into a whole bunch of different books, but it really helped take my mind away from a lot of the stuff that was going on there. And it really started changing my mindset of how I was going to operate for the rest of my life. And so I was told that leaders are readers. I was told that. And that became more important to me as I got older. There was times where I stopped reading for a little while, but then I picked it up. And then from there, it elevated into more, where I was reading more books about motivation. I was reading about, power of mindset, psychology books, and I was getting into all sorts of different crazy baseball books and doing more coaching books and so on and so forth. And then I found out that it was making me a better person. You need to do what you need to do to become a better person, so that way you can live in the positive. This game will eat, and it will eat the negative. We talk about the baseball guys sometimes. We'll say, man, I'll tell you what, you ever have a bad day and then all of a sudden the ball always comes to you because you've already had 3 errors? My head, let me tell you. That stinks. I'm not even kidding. It's terrible. It's a terrible feeling to have. Nobody likes to have that feeling. Okay? But imagine if you flip that script for just a minute and you were like, you know what, I'm not going to let this eat. And you find a way, and you clear your mind, and you fixed your batting gloves, you tapped the top of your back, you patted the chest, you removed your hat, fixed your hair. I don't care what you do. Close your eyes, take a breath for a second, but you found a way to clear it, to get back to positive. Do you think it's going to find you the same? It won't. These are the answers to fix the problems. And almost nobody will take the steps to do it. And, well, some will because they'll learn to do it. And they'll practice that. Others may struggle with that. But you know how many players will go their whole life and not even know how to do that? Tons. You have an opportunity to do a lot of good things, but it's going to maintain off the principles of changing your mindset to a positive mindset. Teamwork. Teamwork is all based off of multiple things that you can create as a whole between all of you, amongst everybody, that you can really elevate the play. And that means on and off the field. Sometimes it's been said that you should do something fun together, right? You can go bowling, you can go to whatever the trampoline park maybe, or you can go to the movies together. Do a fishing trip together, okay? Chemistry. Does that sound familiar? Chemistry, okay? Chemistry happens in a lot of different ways, but usually it happens when you take the time out to experience things outside of what you're doing together. Some of the worst cultures that I have ever seen are the ones where the players do not want to work together to find something to do. And there's no leadership that wants to step up and say, hey, I don't care who it is, we want you there. Because at some point in time, you never know what's going to happen on the ball field where you need someone to step up and get a job done. And maybe they just need to be believed in just a little bit more. Maybe they need it to be just a little bit more positive amongst the feeling of their teammates. You don't ever know what that's like until it really hits. But if you ever had a teammate that you looked at and you were like, oh boy, he's coming up to the plate, here we go. Smiling, you know what I'm talking about. Can't do that, right? Because that is a culture killer. For a winning culture, you got to turn that dial all the way up for everybody. Because that one player may be the game changer. That may be the one moment where that player has a hit and you're like, I can't believe this, okay? Now I'm gonna talk about there was a travel ball player I had with me, I'm not gonna say the name, and this kid right here probably had struck out more times than I'd like to admit. And then it was just like, you could see the struggle, it was tough. And then all of a sudden, we're on a weekend, we're playing in a game. And out of nowhere, here it comes. And I mean, the exit velocity off this bat had to be 100 miles an hour. It changed. I mean, it was a missile that just pelted back towards the right field wall. And everybody went nuts. Okay? But you know what? The feeling before that probably was what? Oh gosh, here he comes again. Right, here comes the strike. But something shifted. See? And once something shifts, it only gets better. So within your framework of a win culture in that teamwork, you have to all take advantage of every situation, and you have to have each other's backs. You're gonna have to do that. And you're gonna have to do it on and off the field. It's gonna have to happen in school. It's gonna have to happen if you run into each other, somewhere out wherever. You are family. You're gonna have to be family. You're gonna have to be glue. You're gonna have to do that. You will need that. That's what winning culture is. That's the difference maker in everything that you will have for the rest of your life. Is going to be when you can create an environment that you can really excel in, and everybody on that one team is operating as a solid unit. There's a good old military saying that's for this. Do you know what that is? Anyone guess? You're only as strong. Say it louder. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So why don't you bring that link up a notch? Have you ever thought about that? No? Bring up that link. Bring it up. Bring it up. Right? That's what good teams do. They're gonna bring it up all the time. So this is the beginning of a winning culture. All right? We know for a fact, okay, attitude's got to be good. Talk about teamwork, power of positive, right? We got to be positive, okay? Coach, do you have anything that you would like to add to this? Good. Okay. Homework.